Well, hello everybody. Thanks for coming today. Great turnout. Hope the food is delicious. My name is Greg Parham. I am with First Alliance Title, and we're bringing this event back from the old days. Does anybody remember Investor Advantage back in like 2008, 2009, 2007? Raise your hands. Let's see. Yeah, so we used to do this exact thing back then, and we would have people come join us for lunch, do some networking, and then we would do different investor classes. And I was going through those classes today, laughing at some of them, because one of them that we were doing repeatedly back then was door knocking on foreclosures. Another one was how to negotiate and close a short sale. You guys remember those short sales? Anybody know what I'm talking about? How to do a short sale flip with an option contract. Yeah, so there were a lot of things that now, of course, are outdated because times have changed, the market's a little bit different. But there are quite a few that are the same. Fix and flips are pretty much the same drill. And knowing how to buy a rental is pretty much the same drill. It's a little harder market, perhaps. But even back then, I remember people complaining that there were no inventory for fix and flips. You could never make money on fix and flips. Oh, rentals were too expensive. You could never make money on a rental. So it's kind of funny how things change, but they don't really change. So the format that we're going to do here is we're going to have, get lunch started, which all of you are doing, and then we'll have some speakers. We're going to split this one into two today. The first half is going to be deal analysis for fix and flips. Second half is going to be the rentals, and then we'll bring a panel of people up here to then do a question-answer session. So keep your questions, make some notes, keep your questions for the end. These speakers might entertain some questions as they go through. I think that's the best way to do it, but I'll try to be a time tracker so that we don't get here all afternoon. Okay? Let me introduce Joe Massey. Did you already talk to these folks?
I said hi.
Okay. Joe already said hi, but Joe's going to introduce our speakers and get us rolling.
Thanks, Greg. All right, guys. My name is Joe Massey with Castle & Cook Mortgage. I know a number of you in the room, and first thing I want to thank is Greg for putting this on and organizing all of this. Thank you very much, Greg, for doing that. We really appreciate it. So one important thing that I want you all to be aware of is we have a closed Facebook group for this networking meeting, and you guys are all going to receive an invitation from Channing. I'm not sure where he's at, but he's our web guy. He's going to send you an email or a Facebook message so that, there it is, so that you can get added to the Facebook group. It's going to be a great way to stay connected with each other, to learn about the upcoming events, the upcoming speakers that we're going to have. So if you have questions, feel free to post on there. Feel free to email Greg, myself, Charles. We're here to get to know everybody and help you do more deals. So let's talk about what we're up to today. We have Eric Ross here. Eric has been a property manager for 10 years. Yep. Excellent property manager, has retired from that and is now doing fix and flips full time. And one of the things that we hear all the time is, I can't make any money in fix and flips. I can't find any deals. Contractors are too expensive. It takes too long. I can't sell the deal. All these problems that we all run into, right? So we asked Eric to speak because he's got a lot of knowledge in this, he's got a lot of experience in this, and he's going to share with you what he's doing, how he's doing it. He's going to give you some ideas, some tips, some ways that are going to make all of us better business people and hopefully make us all more money. He's a very good presenter. I encourage you, though, if you have questions, shout them out, but let's kind of keep them short because we do want to stay on track, but then we'll have additional time for questions at the end. So without further ado, Eric Ross.
Thanks, Joe. So good afternoon, everyone. Again, Eric Ross. I am a recovering property manager. 10 years here in the Denver market, and have worked with a number of you through the years. The last 8-9 months or so, Lon Welsh and I had been working on our fix and flip projects. Prior to that, for clients, I essentially did flips over the last 5 years. So whether it was single family, apartments or multifamily buildings, repositioning those assets and essentially flipping them during that time. So we're going to go over 3 recent projects that we've worked on here in the last 6 months. So first one, 41st Ave and Wheat Ridge. So this one was on the MLS. 30 plus days, so stale listing. We made an offer the day after they made a $25,000 price drop. Bought at 362. Rehab took right about a month, and we had it under contract in 10 days at 475. Mostly cosmetic. Did a little outside work. You'll see some kitchen work. Took out the carpet, redid hardwoods. Really cosmetic work, nothing major. We did add egress windows for some legal bedrooms in the basement. Lovely basement. So this is just a breakdown of the numbers. So 378 all in after we purchased the property, closing costs, commissions, etc. 475 is where we have it under contract. And then the list of expenses, so all in, 36,500 on rehab. That's a new roof, new garage doors, paint, flooring, etc., etc. We break it down pretty generally, but end result is almost a 60,000 net profit on a 90-day project. On the MLS, and again, all cosmetic work, no structural, no mold. Some afterpicks, redid the hardwoods, nice 1950s in Wheat Ridge, egress window in the basement. Kept the cabs in place, simple paint, nice appliances. Again, just clean it up and makes it pretty straightforward and easy. This was, again, MLS deal, so they are out there. We're working on our next MLS deal. Any questions on what we did at 41st?
On the sale price, where were you in with comparables as far as the price goes from where you were looking going in and what you actually sold at?
So we were just below the top count. And so in the neighborhood, a similar 5-bed, 2-bath sold at 485. So we went in at 475 with the purpose of being just below that count.
So it was just one, or were there more than one?
There were 2 or 3 right in that exact same area.
You have hard money on this?
No, so this is, again, we found it on the MLS, was able to get traditional financing through a local bank. So no hard money cost, 20% down.
You're at 1,300 on the board, did you strip and refinish totally, or did you kind of buff them out?
So it was a strip and a couple of coats of poly.
Any question?
He asked, the 1,300 on the refinishing of the floors, was it a full refinish? So it was a strip and a couple of coats of poly.
Show a roof on there, which is roof?
So that's in the 12.5 expense to finish as it hasn't hit our bank yet. So the roof was, we had a couple of items on inspection, a roof and a sewer. So we knew that was coming and we just utilized it at the end. So about half of that is roof and about half of that is sewer.
Yeah, how many bedrooms was this?
So this is a 5-bed, 2-bath. Yes, sir.
What insurance are you carrying for that Jeep?
Let's see, insurance. So that's essentially it's through farmers. It's a landlord policy like anything else, and we're just paying it monthly. So this was, and that's probably twice that now. Again, this was made when I was running the P&L, so not everything had quite hit yet, but it's $83 a month. Okay. So this is South Yank Street down in Morrison, so 285 in Sims area. It is in process. So this one we purchased from a wholesaler. The biggest issue here was we needed to solve the problem. The owner got into some financial trouble, had to sell the property, and needed time to find somewhere else to live. So we were able to purchase from the wholesaler, rent back to the current owner or the previous owner for a couple of months, solve the issue. The purchase price on this was $262. 3-bed, 2-bath with 2 non-conforming in the basement. So we did add egress here. Note the lovely purple and yellow. and every color of tile in the free world. So this was the handiest handyman ever. Everything in this house was touched by him and was put together with baling wire, a little bit of duct tape, and some spit. All homemade, 100% across the board. So $267 was the purchase price, all in. $283. This will exit right around that $365 mark. We've got it actually modeled a little bit higher, but being conservative. I've got a lot of stuff wrapped up in here because we are still in process. This also got a new roof, egress windows, garage door. We took out this little wall here, which the previous owner had just put up, opened up the kitchen. A lot of outside work just to clean up. I think we're 3 dumpsters deep on this one that the guy left behind. Really, again, straightforward, cosmetic. We're not, you know, we moved a wall that was put in, but we're not doing anything really big structural here, adding square footage. But again, with the wholesale side, you know, it really just is networking. So making sure your wholesalers know that you're looking, what you're looking for, your ability to close is going to be the key to working with those wholesalers. So far, so you can see we've removed the wall, took the corner out, putting in a bookshelf, new cabs, granite, and then we can get back to the first so we can see we painted, and the lovely fake rock we've painted as well, as he had 3 different versions throughout the house. Any questions here? Yes, sir.
What's the definition of a wholesaler?
I don't think I want to answer that question. So this was, this gentleman got it under contract off the MLS and assigned the contract to us.
Off the MLS?
It was on the MLS. So he pulled it off the MLS. He made his 5,000 or so on it. So if you're on the MLS, you can still find those deals.
Can you talk a little bit about egress windows and how you think that impacts the value for this particular property?
Sure. So 2 of the bedrooms in both of these previous products were below grade and non-egress. So after 10 years of property management, I believe very strongly if there's basements in the bedroom, spend the money, put the egress, you're going to get the value, and you don't have the liability of claiming a bedroom in the basement. That's my just personal. So our egress windows, we get right around $3,000 a piece. So as we make those legal bedrooms, it really helps our value, and the return on the money is quite worth it.
So to make them legal, you have to pull permits on them.
We do pull the permits on the egress windows, absolutely.
How long does that turn time normally take you?
4 to 5 days.
You only put the egress windows into the bedrooms, not in the living space?
Correct.
So on this, I don't see it, maybe I don't see it, but there's no realtor fees, right? So this is because you partner as a realtor, but the buying agent still get paid, correct?
On the sale, correct.
I think so realtor fees were on your cost of goods sold.
Yes.
65.
Okay.
That's the realtor fees.
All right.
Rolled into a closing cost realtor fees on the sale side.
Title, et cetera.
And there is no seller side.
Correct. So Leona Drive, Sherwood, Conifer Road up in Thornton. So this was brought to us off market from a broker. It was used as a rental for 10 plus years and did have some structural issues. The entire back side of the house had shifted. There was a large concrete patio that had broken off. The garage was cracked and heaved about 3.5 inches, so we did a fair amount of concrete work on this one. Don't have any before pictures. Unfortunately, we did do the yard, did pretty well. Painted cabs, granite, backsplash. Again, cosmetic outside of the small structural stuff, we did bring in our structural engineer. They gave us what they'd like us to do, brought in our flat work and concrete guy, did everything to the engineer standard, and brought the engineer back to get the secondary report, so we had the before and after, handed over to the new buyer, and no issues there. This entire pad here had separated about a foot from the house and was rolling down the hill. This sits right at the top of Conifer Road, has an amazing view into downtown, but was absolutely sitting on a hill. So the flat work was about a third of the project. The back patio steps and the garage was right around $10,000. So purchased this one at $211 all in, at $228, exited it at $295. Rehab was right around 36 and some change. Net income on it was about 34.5. So, and that included the concrete labor and then just cosmetics. So new floor, kitchen, bathrooms, etc. Make it look good. Exit the product. Anything, you know, in that $350 or less. We don't have to necessarily use as high-end finishes. You want a house in Denver for, you know, $300,000. It's new, it's clean, and it's good.
So Eric, you said it's under 350s, but are there other characters? It looks like these properties so far are maybe like 3 bedroom, 2 bath, 4 bedroom. Are there certain types of properties that you think something to stay away from, or in other words, properties that you really like? This could make a good flip.
So, not necessarily to stay in, I mean, everyone's got their own likes and dislikes, and one of the upcoming slides, I'll kind of show some of the other single families and condos we've done. We like that sub 350 to 400 exit. Again, it doesn't require as high-end of finishes, it doesn't require as much just work, and a less pickier of a buyer, so it's a good subsection for us. I love condos. I'd love to get into a condo and only make $10,000 or $15,000 on it if it only cost me $5 or so to get in. So the risk versus reward, headache versus payout has a lot to do with how we look at a deal. I'd much rather have an easier cosmetic deal, make $30,000 on it, rather than have to pop a top, blow out the back, add a bunch of square footage and make 60 or 70. My money's tied up less amount of time. I don't necessarily have to pull as many permits and be subjected to the city and how long they're taking. So for us, this has been a good model. Any questions here?
I noticed you have the bottom line is 25 to 40 on the last ones you showed us. Could you speak to the whole time for that amount you're making?
So all three of these projects, Leona and 41st were 90 to 100 days close to close. Yank Street, because we had a couple of month rent back, it'll end up being about a 5-month project on the one we showed before. So this will be about a 5-month project. The other two were closer to 3.5 months, close to close. Did you get your picture? I'm sorry.
Hey, so when you do a rent back, you're renting it, so you're rehabbing it and then you're renting it out, correct?
No, so I rent back to the owner lease back, so he paid us basically mortgage, taxes, and insurance for 2 months to stay.
Was he in foreclosure?
Not yet, but was very close.
Who does your designing? Thank you.
Me.
Question? Say, what was the question?
Who does the designing? Me.
And you have your own crew?
So I do. I've got a handful of guys that I've worked for or worked with over the last 10 years. So being a property manager for the last 10 years and having to use a gamut of vendors, I've built some great relationships, and that does put me in a unique position where I have experience with these guys. They know I pay my bills. They know I can run a project. So when I call them up, I do get some favorable treatment.
Do you pay them hourly or by the job?
Depends.
Mostly come in with cash, or you pretty much do all this stuff conventional?
So about half of the projects we've been able to get conventionally. The other half we have came in with cash. So my partner is in a good cash position with a HELOC. So we're able to purchase with cash, close quickly, and then we do work with a local bank to put it on a 6-month interest-only loan. And that allows us to get through the project. We do have to close it twice, so that's one of the disadvantages, but it does put us in a position to play with cash.
You want to trade the bank?
Citywide Bank here in Denver they're great. So I'll leave this up here for a few minutes, but this is the last overall P&L for the last 8 projects. So we did 2 condos, 1 townhouse, and 5 homes. Average home, the rehab was right around 31, condos were 15. So Briar Rose is a 2-bed, 1-bath, 3,000, or 2-bed, 3-bath, 3,000 square foot townhouse down in Littleton, in Roxborough. And so our rehab cost on it is going to be right around $20K. It's on the market at $385. Again, I'm being conservative here. But the net profit when we walk out of that one is 61. And we're going to speak a little bit that on the next slide. 41st we reviewed today, Leona in Yank Street. Victor, single family home in Hoffman Heights. Poplar, a condo just off Hamden. Niagara in Park Hill, and that is in process. And then Little Raven down in Lodo. So we've had a nice mix. I've been asked a couple times, where, are you finding your projects? And it's literally everywhere. If you have the luxury of picking where your project is, tell me your secret. I don't know how to get there yet. Like I said, I'll leave this here for a bit yet. Any questions here?
Where'd you get these deals? I mean, you told us on the other 3.
Sure. So MLS, wholesaler, off-market, MLS, wholesaler, MLS, wholesaler.
How many projects do you do a year?
So we're on track for 20 this year. So this is 8 since last August. So if all goes well, still trying to find deals. Yes, sir.
What do you do for rough estimates? Like, if I'm looking at a bunch of properties on the MLS, is there a way for me to just kind of give something to ballpark eliminate some properties is they're just not going to make the cut for some margin?
Sure. I mean, I'm fortunate enough I get to use the hot sheet that comes out of your castle. So what we're looking at is list price. We're looking at the comps. Take a basic spread, and then after a while you get good at guessing about how much this should run. I've got it broken down by area or project, but on average it's about 30 to 35 a foot remodel cost, give or take, depending on what you're playing with. At that point, if there's enough spread, holding cost, and rehab, then, if we're in that general zone of what we like to see is profit exceeds rehab. So if the rehab's 10, I can make 15. If the rehab's 30, I need to make 15. And that'll speak a little bit on the next slide. The relationship between rehab expense and pre-tax profit. So, and we'll flip back and forth. But we can see Niagara is going to be towards the top, as is 41st and Briar Rose. So 41st, my rehab was around 36. Again, it exceeds, our net income exceeds. Same with Briar Rose and Niagara. Versus Little Raven, Victor, and Poplar. So Little Raven, I spent, let's see, $8 grand, made 11. It's still a good project for us, but not as profitable. Yeah, like Yank's the handiest handyman ever. I'll be glad to be done with that one. Same with Victor. You know, Victor's not terrible. Spend 10, walk out with 20. Poplar, spend 20, walking out with 88. Not ideal.
As far as the labor goes, are you including your own labor in that too?
I don't lift heavy things, sir. No, so part of my arrangement with my partner is I oversee the work, and he's got the financial side of it, so it's a really good match for us. I spend, right now I've got 1 under contract, 1 on the market, 2 finishing up, and I'm probably spending 20 to 30 hours a week just making sure things are done, taking care of some of the light accounting. So my time is included at the bottom line.
Eric, I think you said 30, 35 a foot. Is that above grade or the whole thing?
Right at the whole thing. Again, if you end up having to play with roofs or sewer lines or some of the bigger stuff, that'll skew it. But from a cosmetic rehab standpoint, and that's a mid-grade finish.
Did you say that you expense your own time? Did you?
No, I mean my time is this is my job. So when we sell it and do a good job, I get paid.
When you're doing your deal analysis, was that based off the ARVs of the neighborhood, or are you actually pushing the market?
No, based on the ARVs in the neighborhood. So after 10 years of playing with other people's money, I'm very, very conservative. So my construction estimates are always going to be high. My sale costs are always going to be lower. And then if I get extra, that's great. But I take a very, very realistic view for it. We're not looking for what it could be. We're looking for what it is.
Excuse my ignorance, what's the short-term capital gain tax on each of these? What are the implications?
Great. Short-term capital gain tax.
Yeah, you don't know what long-term gain tax capital gain.
But what's the tax? What is the short-term tax?
It's the income, it's not capital gains. There's no capital gains. There's no capital gains, it's income.
Yeah, it's marginal income.
Oh, yeah.
So whatever you.
Yes, sir.
From a legal standpoint, you have it set up as an LLC or a
It is an LLC.
corporation?
LLC.
You have one for each of your rental property or one of your properties?
No, sir. Everything's run under the Boston Court Holdings.
So you buy them under an LLC, the same one that you run them under, or do you buy it under a trust?
Nope. Buy them under everything we run it under and sell it.
What about construction defects? Do you have insurance cover any construction defects?
We don't have any specific insurance. With me overseeing the project, I do our absolute best to make sure everything is done correctly and right. If something does come up down the road, obviously we're going to take care of it, and it's more of a moral standpoint rather than. But if it requires a permit, we get a permit. We're not playing games, and I'm not out to make a quick dollar on someone else's pain.
What's your biggest headache here, challenges?
Fix and flips. Vendors, contractors. But, and I've got a great stable of guys, but as the market continues, as, they get very proud of their work over time, that's the biggest challenge is really maintaining cost and controlling those costs. Sometimes it costs more than you want it to, but that's probably the hardest. Analyzing a deal, finding a deal, working, that's one thing, but contractors are probably my biggest headache.
As many as you do a year, would you consider hiring them on a full-time basis?
It's possible, but again, it's just a matter of finding the right one, and with my experience, I've learned that vendors have a shelf life. So when you've got all your eggs in a basket and then they don't show up, then what? So it's that's the biggest challenge by far.
What would you say went wrong with Poplar?
The biggest thing with Poplar is it went on the market in October, so we had some seasonality issues. It was probably a bit overpriced initially. And then as we moved into the holiday season, we pulled it. So a lot of that's holding cost. And currently, my partner has his family living in it as they're building a new home. So it's actually worked out well, long run. That it solved some issues. But the biggest part was the whole cost, and we didn't get what we thought we were going to get for it. Check your ARVs.
What about the contractor question, hiring a full-time? Do you have one crew to do your whole project, or do you stack your subcontractors so they?
So I stack my subcontractors. So I've got a guy for granite, I've got a floor guy, a paint guy, et cetera, et cetera. I've tried through the years to hand it to one company, and even though you should get a discount for volume, I've yet to be able to do that. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have your general contractor's license?
I do not. Yes, sir.
So when you pull your permits, so when you go for something else.
So the vendors, so if I have an electrical permit that needs to be pulled, my electrician's gonna pull it. My egress window guys will pull it, and they have an engineer to draw out the, the frame and get it processed. So whatever vendor that I require for a permit, they're the ones that are gonna be able to pull it in the municipality. Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned the roof and the sewer, but internal systems, is there something like electrical that would turn you off from?
Not, so the question was roof and sewer. Was there anything inside that would turn us off? It's based on a cost, analysis. So if it needs updated electrical and I can fit that into the budget and still make numbers work, no, we're not really afraid of that. We're looking for, is there enough return for the headache of having to replace the electrical? Yes, sir.
What percentage of your profits do you reinvest versus just
It just varies as to what I've got coming down the pipeline and what I have to pay for. So the question was, how much do we reinvest and how much do we just redistribute? And again, it just depends on what I have to close next month.
How many partners? Just the two of you?
Just the two of us. How many partners? Just myself and a partner. Yes, sir.
And with your partnership, how do you value your time in terms of percentage of ownership in the county?
So we've got a very easy setup. He has a great banking relationship, and I know how to run properties, and we split everything 50-50. Yes, ma'am.
Do you, on this money that he's investing, do you guys charge him interest rates and projects for it, or that's just his contribution?
So the question is there any interest charged on the money that he's putting up? Yes, he does.
So he gets his interest plus 50%?
Correct.
Do you do your own inspections?
No. So, well, I take that back. The question is, do we do our own inspections? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It just depends on the project. If it's a condo where I'm doing paint, carpet, etc., no. If we know there's something structural going on or something a little bit bigger, then we'll hire that out. Anything else? Oh, I appreciate it. If I'll be here the rest of the afternoon, if I can have any more information. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, one more question. Can you quantify maybe what percent you get from MLS, your deals, what percent are wholesale, what percent are kind of insider deals?
Sure. So let's just use the last 10. 5 were wholesale, 2 were brokers, and the other 4 were MLS.
Hey, Eric, I know the answer to this question, but isn't it that you're getting the same margin regardless of whether you're buying it wholesale?
100%. It makes no difference where we're buying it. The margins are about the same, and most fix and flippers would probably tell you the same thing. All right, thank you very much.
Eric Ross, thank you so much. Really terrific information. One thing that I want to point out, I know Eric didn't cover this, but I think it's important. Everybody knows I'm not a fix and flip guy. I do long-term financing. One thing that stuck out to me, just about every one of these, if the market were to change, Eric and his partner could rent that out and actually positively cash flow most of these properties. All right, it's the exit strategy he didn't talk about because it's not their focus, but if something were to happen and you have a $700,000 flip, you might have trouble renting that out. If I've got a $330,000 flip and I can't get it sold, I could rent it out in case of an emergency. So I always like to point that out. It's one of those things I think that's really smart about flip investors that are in the lower to mid-range prices. You know, he's not making huge home runs in every one of these. He's hitting a lot of singles, and I'll bet he's beating a lot of our other fix and flip competition. So really impressive. Very, very proud of what you've accomplished there. All right, next thing I want to bring Channing up. He's going to talk just a little bit about the Facebook group. Channing?
Hi everybody. So just briefly here, if you'd like to find our Facebook group today, just go to Facebook.com/groups/Investor Advantage and click the Ask to Join button. We will go ahead and send everybody an invitation and email later as well. But if anybody's anxious, that's how you can find our group today. Thanks.
All right, guys. Next step is we're going to have Charles Roberts from York House Real Estate come up. Who here's ever heard Charles speak before? Anybody? All right, so you guys know what you're in for. Terrific information that Charles is going to have for us. He's going to talk a lot about the market, a little bit about renting or buying properties for the long term. It's a little bit of the opposite part of what Eric spoke about, but I think it's going to be some really good information. Charles, please come on up.
Thanks, Joe. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. Thanks, Greg, for putting this back together. How many years has it been since we haven't done this? 2000? Seriously? Oh my, the last one we did was 2009. Wow. Okay, I was a lot taller back then. Okay, so I actually thought a lot about this, and I'm going to talk about something that I've never really talked about before. Before I get started, for those that I don't know, it's important to understand, I started as a fix and flipper. And it turns out I was a pretty bad one. And I got myself into just sort of like not a lot of good stuff, and the market went down, and a lot of it was my responsibility. But I started 20 years ago as a fix and flipper. I bought and held some properties, got licensed about 13 years ago to be a better flipper, and realized, wow, we had actually a lot of what people needed to be as agents, and then we built up York Castle Real Estate. And now I run York Castle and I run Shorewood. So I get to see lots and lots of agents. I have 750 agents. I get to see a lot of investors. And I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about something that I have never talked about before. And I promise you, this is going to be a legitimately controversial topic. And I want it to be, because I want to argue with people. I really want someone to say, you're wrong, because I am going to tell you something that you never, ever, ever hear. So this needs to be worth 25 bucks, right? The lunch was pretty good, but now you're going to hear something you've never heard before. So what I want to do is talking about the one thing that everybody knows is true in real estate. You go to any seminar, you talk to any agent, you talk to a guru, you talk to someone who just read one book on real estate, and everybody says you make your money on the buy, right? You've got to make your money on the buy. Would anybody want to argue with that? What kind of knucklehead would stand in front of 60 people, a lot of whom are really experienced investors, and good people, and Terry McCarthy as well. Yeah. You know, and actually argue with this. But I'm going to tell you, this is the theme of what I'm talking about. And in my mind, if I can sum up 20 years of the mistakes that I have seen investors make, it's this. Now, let me do a quick caveat. Greg put this together. And the reason I'm talking about this is exactly because of what Eric said. Eric Ross said everything right, because that is true for fix and flips. You have to make your money on the buy. So when you buy a fix and flip, what's the word, the percent ARV? Like how much of a discount do you pretty much need to get or you're not going to buy it? 15, 20%. You hear that? 20, 30%. You really, I mean, these guys are really good. They have cheap money. They've got great labor. They do it over and over again. But he still needs to get it 20% undervalued. So far, we're good with you make your money on the buy, right? The problem is, people don't understand that the buy and hold long-term investing strategy is completely different. So what do? They say, oh, I need to make my money on the buy, right? And then they never buy anything. And I've seen for 20 years, so many people never buy a property because they couldn't find something at a 20% discount. By the way, I can't find something at a 20% discount. Good luck finding something at a 20% discount. Some of you can, a few of you can. It's a very difficult thing to do. So this is what I want to address. And just start the cat calls anytime you like, because I really, really want to get into this. Because the problem is, people think that if they're going to buy and hold property forever, they have to make their money. They have to get it at a discount. And that would be fine if they could actually get it at a discount. The issue is that in a market like this, and quite frankly, in the market that I've been in for 20 years, it's very difficult to actually get a legitimate discount, which means you buy it today, sell it tomorrow, make a profit. That's a legitimate discount. So what I have seen, and the message I'm trying to get across is, for the vast majority of people who have bought and held real estate and built incredible wealth over time, they did not have to buy it at a discount. They bought it because it was the right property for them, they were willing to be long-term landlords, and they built incredible wealth over time. That's the message. It sounds simplistic, but over and over and over again, I've seen people try to get into the business because they want to build wealth over the long term and never buy anything because they had to get it at a discount and didn't have the talent and the experience that Eric and Lon has. Let me stop. Yes or no? I don't want to hear yes, actually. I want to actually have, is there anybody who disagrees with that in terms of buying and holding for the long term? John. Okay, let me get a couple. Daniel.
Depending on how old you are and what are your goals, right?
Depending on how old you are. Give me an example.
I would say, for instance, I'm planning on retiring in probably 5 years. So I'm trying to see if I can get it quick loss.
Okay.
Rather than if you're younger.
Okay, that's a good point.
You have time to basically wait it out.
So let me address that and I'll get to you. So what he says is, he wants to retire in 5 years, therefore he wants to get it more at a discount because he's trying to accelerate it. And let me just be clear, we all want to get it at a discount. The problem is, what if you never buy anything? That's the issue I'm trying to say. Is that what if you knock on 1,000 doors and never buy anything, and year after year go by? You got to have 20 years in this business to see how sad it is when people make that mistake. So of course you want to buy it at a discount. Of course you want to do the work. All I'm saying is, it isn't just about buying at a discount. But I definitely agree with you, the younger you are, the more time you have to pay it off and build that wealth. But the issue is, and come back to me in a year or two, I want you to find something at a discount. Just let me know, because I can't find anything at a discount.
I agree.
So, how long have you been looking?
Oh, no, I buy basically as I find something right, I just get on.
Okay, and that's great, and he buys stuff.
Right.
Okay, awesome. So, hello, sir, the man who just sold me a property.
So I think the caveat is if you don't have more money to put into real estate, that from an outside job, then you have a one and done, you buy it at peak or something like that. I'm not advocating timing the market. It can, if you buy at a discount, then you can refinance your rates out, your money out, and continue to do it, I think.
Without question. And you've done this. So you're a wholesaler, you're a fix and flipper, you're a long-term landlord, you're a real estate agent, you're an experienced guy. And what he said is, yes, what you want to do, of course, is buy with equity so that you can ideally pull money out, either immediately or over time, and buy more properties. Let me be super clear. I'm not arguing with that. I'm just saying you've done something that most of us can't do. Most of us haven't done. You send out mailers. You are a professional at this. And that is great. I'm not demeaning you. I'm actually commending you. Because you've done something that very, very few folks who get into real estate have done, can do, or put the time into. Most people actually don't do that, and what they find is that real estate sucks because they couldn't find anything, and then they die poor. And that's a problem. And that's what I'm trying to address. I'm trying to give you an alternative viewpoint that it isn't just about buying properties at a discount. So the bottom line is, pretty much none, except maybe the one you sold me 5 weeks ago, did I ever buy at a discount. Thank you very much for 2575 South Sheridan Boulevard, number 16, because that was an awesome property I bought from you. Most of what I have bought over the last 20 years hasn't been at a discount. I buy it, I hold it, I pay it off, I make a ton of money. And most of my clients have done the exact same thing. So you've got to decide what's right for you. If you're an agent, you need to decide how you want to counsel your clients. I'm just giving you a viewpoint that you never hear, that it actually is a decision. And if the decision is buy at a discount, be the coolest kid in town, and never buy a property, or buy one property every year or two, get them paid off, and build tremendous wealth, and retire young, believe it or not, that is a decision. Right? Anything? I'm getting nothing here. What do you think?
Well, I will say, back in 2004, 2005, there was a couple of people in this room and a bunch of others that came to me at the title company to help them structure transactions. And we're doing their very first deals, and they were all fix and flips. And every single one of those people has talked to me over the last 2 years and said, my God, I wish I would have just bought some rentals.
Right. Who wished they had bought in 2010 at market value? And who didn't? You see how you can get really excited about this? We should have bought at market value in 2010 because you'd be up about 120%, or God knows what you'd be up right now. That's the point I'm trying to make. And I'm really passionate about it because I really love working with people and I love trying to help people, but I know that to be this guy here or this guy here, that's really hard. And I'm certainly not them, and I think most of us aren't. So at least take that into consideration. Joe, you bought a couple of rentals. I actually don't even know the answer. I helped you with one of them. Like, at what discount did you buy them to the market?
Zero.
Zero. Okay, stand up. Why would you, like a really smart guy who makes a lot of money and is really good and went to the University of School of Mines, why would you buy something with zero equity?
I don't need equity because I'm not planning to sell it. I'm planning to rent it for the long term, and equity will be built up over the next 30 years just naturally. I don't need a discount today.
So that's it. So just to think about this and let this sink in. And now let's talk a little bit about how we look at properties. So this right here, this is my beautiful graphic to explain what I'm trying to say here, okay? Let's just say this is all the properties out there. Eric somehow can find that sliver of 1%. Why? He's really good at this. He knows everybody in town. Lon has these great relationships. These guys can do something that most of us can't. They can find stuff with serious 20% equity. Then there's a couple of percent here. Well, let's look at this right here. These are all the properties that are kind of out there. And then what I look at is properties that fit the mold for a certain individual, for an investor to buy and hold over the long term. And I define it as these right here. So if you're an investor that wants to get into investing, hold for the long term, you've just got to make a decision on which properties you want, and you need to be realistic on, can you buy these properties? That's what I'm trying to get across here. So let's talk about how we analyze properties. So these are investing formulas that are just not that complicated. They're really quite simple. And what I say to folks who approach me, I'm actually meeting a new client at 2:30 today. We're going to sit down and talk. And it's very likely they're going to say they want a deal. And I'm going to basically tell them what I tell everybody. It's good luck. I'm not wasting my time with you. You don't know what you're doing, and I don't work for $1 an hour to get a deal. What I think you actually want is to buy property that would make sense for you, hold it, pay it off over time, and build a lot of wealth. And we use these types of metrics to actually help us determine what those properties look like. And ask any questions you like. These are the ones, cap rate. So who here likes, say, cap rate? Who's a cap rate guy or gal? I happen to like cap rate. Cap rate, it's the net operating income divided by the sales price, assuming it's bought outright. But it doesn't mean you're going to buy it outright. What it means is that you get to compare in a simple little analysis a property to a property to a property. It gives a lot of insight into the value of a property by taking the loan out of it. So who here does this all the time? What's a typical cap rate for, an Aurora South 3-bedroom townhouse right now in today's market? A typical property?
6.
I don't know. 6? What do you think, John?
6 or 7.
Yeah, 6. I mean, we closed on 32 deals in 2017, and they were all 7.2 up to low 8s, 7.5. Right now, it's like a 6.5. It's tough right now. It is legitimately tougher than normal. But that's great that you guys know. So if I was to come to you or another person and say, hey, I got this 7.8 cap and it's in pretty good shape, what are you going to say?
Buy it.
You're going to say, buy it. That's the point. Is he's going to know, yeah, he's going to say, don't buy it. You don't need any more property. Let me buy it. That's why it is so useful to be able to have a metric or two so that you can make a quick decision in a market like this where you have to make a quick decision. So there are cap rate people, and then there are cash on cash people, which is the year one cash flow divided by the amount you put down. And that actually helps you figure out how much money you're making on your money. Is anybody here kind of a cash on cash return guy? Great. And it's, I always joke, it's like Broncos versus, Raiders, or, Catholics and Protestants. Like, you can't argue it. It's like whatever's good for you. Just pick one and get really good at it. I personally prefer Broncos, and I prefer cap rate. You got to figure out what's right for you. Then there's gross rent multiplier, which is very simplistic. It's just the purchase price divided by the monthly rent. But in today's market, what's a typical Aurora South condo GRM? 150? Exactly. It's about 150. Yeah, which is not great. That equates to about a 9 or 10% cash on cash and about a 6.5 cap rate. That's what we're seeing. And then the last one is probably the best one, but it's actually quite complicated. And I'm going to actually show you stuff from Joe's spreadsheet that he is happy for anybody who doesn't have it, use it. So Bill, when you threw your property by me, first thing I did is like 10 seconds in the spreadsheet, I'm like, ooh, okay, yeah, I might want to buy this property because I pulled these numbers. The after-tax annualized return, it's another way of looking at it is called the internal rate of return. And basically what it says is, if you put $1 in, after 5 years, what compound interest did you make after tax on that dollar? So if you put a dollar into US Bank, your after tax would be like a cent or something, right? It would be tiny. What's great to see using a power of something like Joe's spreadsheet is you can see why people make so much money by buying and holding real estate if you can deal with being a landlord by looking at the internal rate of return. So questions, thoughts, comments, anything else you guys like? Something you don't like? Let me go around. Yes, sir?
What's the number on cash on cash? What's a good number for that?
What's a good number? It's going to depend. So unfortunately, that's my answer a lot of times. Let's say you have to be in Walsh Park. 5.1 is going to be great. Let's say you're loving Commerce City. You might be in the low to mid 7s in this market. Last summer, it might have been more like 8. So that's the perfect question, is what is the number? There's no exact number. What I can tell you though, the one rule of thumb that works every single time is the worst property in the worst neighborhood in the worst condition gets the best cash flow and has the highest cap rate. That is what we always know. So what we see a lot is investors, kind of like us, who are buying in your, Lakewoods, Aurora South, Denver Southeast in the 160 to 250 range. In this market, cash on cash tends to be 8 or 9, maybe 10.
50 to 400 now?
Yeah, I know. Well, I know.
There's no 150s.
1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, yeah. It's gotten hard. But to answer your question, cash on cash in the 9s or so, cap rates in the 6.5s is what we're seeing right now. And I cannot over stress how important it is to have those types of numbers. For the vast majority, it's not about finding the deal. It's very hard to find a deal. It's about actually learning a few numbers and finding what's right for you. Yes, question? Yes, yeah.
You keep saying if you like being a landlord, can you talk about property management?
So, I bought a property from this guy right here, fantastic deal. He threw it out to me and said, hey, I want to sell it, find someone. I wasn't even looking for buying another property. I've owned properties for 20 years. I bought 6 more a couple years ago. But it was such a good deal. I said, you sure you want to sell it at that price? He said, yeah. He's worked with me before. I appreciate it very much. So, a week ago, the tenant moves in on March 2nd. On March 5th, we find out that it's on the 2nd floor. Think like a Motel 6. Like you go to climb up the 2nd floor and you have a little banister there, a little walkway to get into your room. So 4 days after she moved in, her boyfriend threw her off the 2nd story. And she landed on her back. In the hospital, broken back. Wailing that it wasn't her boyfriend who did it. This is 4 freaking days ago, if you want to know what it's like to be a landlord. And I want my rent, which is why I go Section 8, because I'm still going to get my rent. So this is the issue I got to deal with. If anybody saw me in the office on Friday, I was kind of in a bad mood. I'm like, fuck, this lady's in a hospital. Her boyfriend threw up. I got to deal with some guy who throws ladies, 62-year-old lady, by the way, off the 2nd floor. It gets even better. I talked to the property manager, the nice lady, the old lady who's the property manager. She's just chatting with me and this and that. Guess what? They have video. She didn't get thrown off. She jumped off. This is my life, okay? This is why I make so much money in real estate and I deserve every freaking penny of it. Because I gotta deal, I'm like, what does that mean? I don't even know what that means. They have video of her jumping off the second floor porch. So, do you want to hear about 2 weeks ago? I mean, this is the stuff we deal with. I will tell any crowd that I talk to, I think 80% of people, normal people, should not own real estate. I truly believe that. I just think, oh my God, do you want to like watch football on Sunday or watch Ellen? Or do you want to make a huge amount of money and actually have to work really hard sometimes? That's kind of what I'm talking about. And I see lots of nods from my friends and colleagues and people who've done this for a long time. Story after story after story. I, however, think it's a wonderful way to build wealth, and it's the best thing that I ever did, but I honestly think most people shouldn't do this. Yeah, follow up.
Does it still work with the property manager? Say you don't want to do it. You don't want to.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you were a property manager, you made a lot of money for your investors, right? But do you ever want to be a property manager again? What a surprise. He doesn't ever want to be a property manager again, because he's got 20 stories for every one I have. The one thing that I'm going to say, though, I'm actually teaching at NAPARM tomorrow. It's the national, it's the property managers organization. I'm going to teach to like hundreds of whatever property managers. In my opinion, I will tell you honestly, and obviously you know me, that I manage my own property, and I think the idea that if you give it to a property manager, suddenly you don't have to really worry about anything, with all due respect, is ridiculous. Can I say ridiculous? Sure. I feel like no matter what, real estate is not a turnkey way to make money. We make tons of money, we earn tons of money. Yeah, great question. Any other thoughts? Okay, I'll go on. Okay, so cash flow spreadsheet. So who has Joe's spreadsheet? Who uses Joe's? I'm sure a lot of you. If you don't, you should at least be familiar. We'll put it on the Facebook page. It is super, super simple, okay? Because all you have to do is type in a couple of numbers. I swear to God, it was like 12 seconds later I saw what a ridiculous deal this was, and I bought it. Why? Because I know what a cap rate is. It gives you things like monthly cash flows and cap rates and gross rent multipliers and 5-year internal rates of return. You owe it to yourself to actually look at it. And because Joe has nothing better to do, you can always just go to Joe and sit with him for like 4 hours, and he'll walk through, the whole thing and explain it to you. It's not hard. We're here as a group. We want to be friends and colleagues. We want you to use something that will be helpful, and I'm telling you, it's incredibly helpful, and I appreciate his putting it together. So Justin, I don't know what you do, so I'm going to actually look at this property that, it's actually not, but it was similar. So when I brought you Asbury, what did you do? How did you make a decision on that one a few months ago?
One of the big things was I trust my agent. If my agent said it's a good deal, then I should go for it.
Okay, but not really. Nice try, but you did some numbers, right?
Yeah.
Okay, help me out here.
I used Joe's spreadsheet.
Right, okay. I just had to keep asking the questions until we got to the answer that I wanted. And then what got you to say, hey Charles, sure, let's go take a look at Asbury?
Yeah, so we had a conversation about what the property was and what was going on with it. There was a current Section 8 tenant in place. Tried to buy this property, and even just Google Maps could show you that the exterior was in need of some love. So we knew that the property had was what it was, I guess. And then so we looked at what we could get it for. So for me, I have certain criteria, and I use those criteria in different steps in the process. So the first one was what was the gross rent multiplier. So what we just said, right, it was 130, now it's creeping up to 150. And for this property, based on what we could probably get it for, it was 105. So that right there, yes, it can be in the car, I'm going to drive across town. My office is in Wheat Ridge, and the property's in South Aurora, so it was worth the drive. And then from there, I did a quick bit of analysis on, okay, well, if I get a loan and I put 25% down and just go conventional as an investor, what will my monthly cash flow be? And so they hit that minimum there. I think just rents over mortgage payment was like $1,000 spread. So I said yes, and I kept moving forward. And then ultimately, just to compare across, for me, the way I compare across, you like cap rates, I like cash on cash returns. I'm looking at my portfolio. And I think before I took in property management or anything else, it was like a 15, 16% cash on cash returns. So, and of course, doing the diligence on the HOA, was there money or a chance of special assessments and other things? And obviously I did a lot of diligence on this property, but everything seemed to fit in. I was comfortable with all the known risks, so I just kept moving forward and we bought.
Hey, tell me about who you are for those who don't know you.
Justin Cooper, I'm a hard money lender with Pine Financial Group, and obviously a real estate investor.
Great. Any questions on that? So he made a decision, he went out and looked, did his research, got under contract, added property to his portfolio using the free spreadsheet, right? We don't sell you anything, free spreadsheets. That's great. This is the property that another client of mine bought, and I just want to use it for those of you who haven't seen this spreadsheet, just to see how easy it is to analyze a property and begin to understand if you want to own these properties. So this right here is a page that I just copied out of the spreadsheet that Joe put together. And the great thing about this is you can only enter where it's a yellow cell, makes it absolutely idiot-proof, and there's just no calculations. You just type in the stuff. You put in the address, how much you want to put down, say the asking price, this was $235, initial repair costs, which we add into the purchase price to figure out the calculations. Things like this right here, the rent, and then it spits out, you click another cell, and it gives you this information. Everything that I think a person needs. And by the way, I don't think, let me challenge. Does anybody, and I really mean this honestly, does anybody feel they need or want more information than these metrics to determine if the property is right as a long-term buy and hold? I'd be curious if anybody has anything that they absolutely need or require.
About a DCR.
Yeah, so he said, what about a DCR? So I totally disagree, and I'll tell you why. The debt coverage ratio is a commercial metric that you guys are focused on because you have so many properties going on, you need it. So if you get commercial loans, then absolutely a DCR, debt coverage ratio, which is the net operating income divided by the PI, right, the debt service, is important. But for the vast majority of us little guys, we're generally getting conventional loans, and therefore the DCR, I think, is redundant, unless you're dealing with commercial banks and you have to have a 125 or higher. Perfect, yeah, go.
Wouldn't you want to consider that if you're thinking of someday going to that point of being where they are with the commercials, so that you know when you make that step that
Yeah.
you're going to
So I'm going to kind of say no. Like, sure, if you want it, that's great. But I'm saying for most of us, most of the time, if you're not there yet, you're just not there yet. You don't need to understand what a debt coverage ratio is, even though it's a simple calculation that a commercial bank wants it above 125. So I would say, sure, if you like DCR, that's great. Then you could just use DCR and not use cap rate or cash on cash.
I'm saying in addition, just to know where
it can't hurt.
Where it's going to, what, you know, when you get to that step, that it's going to filter down.
Yeah, it can't hurt unless it slows you down or gets you into an analysis paralysis. As long as you understand that you understand enough about a property with these couple of metrics, the same as if you had 7,000 metrics. You're not going to know much more with the 7,000s. It's a diminishing marginal return. But Lon, for example, Lon Welsh loves debt coverage ratio. Great. I had a client who bought 17 properties from me off of 1031 a year and a half ago. He was a gross rent multiplier guy. That's just what Vital wanted, was gross rent multiplier. He's an MIT grad. That's what he wanted. Whatever makes sense for you. So this right here is what we call like the payoff pitch. I'm a cap rate guy. This thing was a 7.8 cap, made perfect sense. That's all we needed to see. And I think for most investors, this is about the depth of the analysis that you want to do. So talking about the debt coverage ratio, of course there's nothing wrong with including that unless it slows you down, unless it confuses something, unless you go, well, I can't remember what DCR is, and then you don't actually put an offer in. You want to get enough information to make the property make sense for your portfolio, and then you either go or don't go. Questions? Yeah, Sean.
What tools do you use to estimate the rentability?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I call him, and I still do, even though he's not in the business. But what I'll normally do is Zillow. You know, as real estate agents, we're supposed to hate Zillow, right? That's stupid. Somebody's $50 billion is out there calculating rents, and they do a really damn good job of it. I go to Zillow.com. Zillow.com. And then from there are absolutely others. Tell me who they are. Rentometer, Rent Range. There are some you can pay a little money for. But I start with Zillow, maybe do one other, and then I might call you or Ellie or you know, if I have a nice relationship with the property manager and I'm getting really close, I want to get down to that $50, then I'll call someone like Eric. But I'm telling you, Zillow's a lot better on the rents than it is on the home values. 100%. Yeah. Great question. That's it. And that's a really, really important number. You get that wrong, you're in big trouble. Yep. Questions?
So,
yeah.
I don't really see any like vacancy numbers.
Yeah, there is actually.
It's just not on your.
It's up here. It's right down here. So with our stuff, we tend to put 5% vacancy, 4% rent increase over years, and 5% price appreciation, because that's the 40-year average. So if you literally emailed me and asked for the spreadsheet I have on the South Sheridan, that's exactly what it would say. So you, of course, can put in 2% vacancy, which is what's reflected today, or 10% because you want to be more conservative, but absolutely, great question. It's literally down here. It just didn't fit on the screen. Yeah, so we have maintenance down here, and another great question, because people ask all the time, how much should you put away for reserves? I typically put in something like $800, like 5% of gross rents or something like that, $800 per year, something like that, just depending upon how conservative you want to be. Yeah, it's great, because it's all there. Everything, Joe thought about it, done this for a long time, and he basically hit the 99% of everything we think should be in there. So just running through this, this right here is Justin's. This is the one he bought. And by the way, both of these were on the MLS. We didn't buy these because we thought they had equity. Turns out, the appraisal came in $42,000 above asking, which was I was actually pretty surprised. So yay, we actually got some equity on this one. But that isn't why he bought this. He bought it because it made a lot of sense. You're 30-something years old. You're going to own these for a long time. You're going to send your kids to college. That's why he bought them. And once again, all we do is type where the yellows are, and we got this 8.6 cap. Yeah, exactly. I can't say it out loud, but what he just said was exactly right. And by the way, I've told this story before. I had two other investors looking at this property, both very experienced, both turned it down. And it was on the MLS for like a month and a half. I don't know, I mean, I know why. There were some issues, and needed a paint job, but that made sense. How much time do I get? Okay, great. Let me stop for a second. Any questions, thoughts, where this is going? Who here currently doesn't own any rentals and is interested in buying rentals? Like really, really high. Like, so he was the fix and flip guy, kind of addressing the fix and flippers. I'm more the buy and hold guy, knowing that I'm not really a good fix and flipper. So in a sense, I'm kind of talking to you guys. Like, a couple of you guys, talk about what you're looking for, what you're doing right now to try to build wealth over time with long-term rentals. I know, it's front and center, sorry.
Well, I mean, the goal is to phase us out of our day jobs, hopefully. That's the ultimate goal.
Okay.
But we do, we would rather buy and hold for a really long time rather than do fix and flips, but we're currently in a live-in flip right now.
Okay. You're in a live and flip?
Yes.
Okay, great. And have you started looking for buy and holds?
Not quite yet. We're
Okay.
kind of at the beginning.
Great, and you're here and you're in the right place. And lots of great people to talk to here, because a lot of these folks have bought and hold and built wealth for a long time. Who else is out looking? Just kind of use someone as an example. Yes, sir. Yeah, well, I mean, who are you? What are you doing?
I'm Lawrence. I'm servicing most of my church.
Okay, and you don't own any at this time?
No.
And what's your plan? Like, what's your goal? What are you trying to do?
I mean, pretty much just create a position with them.
Right, but give me a little more practical. Have you gone and looked at properties? What are you looking for? Do you have a metric, or are you here to kind of learn? Are you just at the beginning stage? Okay, that's great. So you're just starting out. Okay, how about one more person who raised their hands? Anybody else? Just pick on someone. Okay, yeah.
Currently, I have some residential, but I want to move on to commercial. Great. Pros and cons.
Yeah, I got a real pro. So he said he currently has residential. He wants to move on to commercial. Why?
I've heard that it's probably, I mean, most people start out in start out in residential.
Right. Second biggest myth in real estate.
And then going forward with
So let me give you, okay, so he's asking, should I move into commercial? Because he's heard that you start out in resi, move to commercial. You're right. Every book tells you that. Every guru tells you that. So I started investing 18 years ago on a bunch of residential properties. Long story, about 3 years ago, It's like, you know what? My God, my investors are buying tons of properties. I'm going to buy some more. I don't know anything about commercial. I sit with John Dovermark, a colleague of mine. He gives me 45 minutes on commercial. I'm like, why the hell would anybody buy commercial? That sucks. He says, yeah, I know. So I actually went and got something called a CCIM. Anybody know what a CCIM is? Tell me somebody knows what it is. Holy shit, it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. I mean, you take these 5-day classes, you take 5-hour tests that you have to pass, you have to start over again, learning the commercial world. I took it really seriously. 53 weeks about brokering. I don't understand why anybody buys commercial, but they don't buy it because it's a better return. That much I know. The bottom line is, our professors, these were people who were running billion-dollar REITs. These were the best in the business. And you know what they said? We don't want to deal with icky clients. That's what I found that commercial people said. Now, of course, there's reasons to buy commercial. But what I'm saying is, it is literally the second biggest myth in real estate that you should start in residential and then you should move to commercial. What you should do is figure out what you want to do and what you're good at and do that.
I mean, easy to finance. I mean, if the numbers look right, they don't really look into your personal incomes and such, as long as the property can produce.
I don't know if I would say commercial is easy to finance. I mean, the guy behind you, like, no, I'm not buying that. So that's more of a discussion, and you should talk to some commercial folks. But I guess I hate to sort of continually be the bad guy, but I don't think you go into commercial because it's easier to finance. Like, no, it's just not. Yeah, but let's talk about it. I mean, you know, and afterwards, offline, these are great discussions because I was exactly where you were 3 years ago, and I said, hey, I know everything about resi, but God, maybe I should get into commercial. And I found that for me, I was comfortable dealing with the people who get thrown over second floor ledges and making huge money. I'm okay with that. The question is who jumped over the second floor ledges, you know? But that was just me, okay? Questions? Anything I'm missing so far? Got a couple more minutes. Yes?
What's the easiest way you have found, you feel HELOCs for gaining property if you already have property is the best? Or?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'll tell you, Joe and I, you know, we're like, you know, best buddies and colleagues and stuff. And we actually love sitting down with people because I was a lender in the past. He's extremely knowledgeable. And of course, there are other lenders as well, but he's here. In a situation like this, it is a very complicated answer. And it really depends on everything. But what I can guarantee you is if someone says HELOCs, they're selling you HELOCs. If someone who says a 30-year loan, they're selling you 30-year loans. It clearly is not straightforward. And what you want to do, I would suggest sit down with a, you know, like a lender and a real estate agent, or trusted people, and open up your books. And there won't be an absolute answer, but you can get much closer to at least understanding the pros and cons. And I will say this for the millionth time in my career. The mistake every real estate investor makes is they spend all the time on the real estate, and they spend too little time on the loan. You should spend all the time on the loan. Put more time into the loan. It's all about the financing. So I love the question. I just can't answer it because I don't know your situation. But it is the right question. And it's not fun. You actually have to sit with people like us who like do this all day long. But boy, do you want to do that. It's so important. And again, you know, happy to, and other lenders, other real estate agents out there, get the right lender, right? You got to get the right person. And there's a lot of those people here. So, right question. Yeah. Hey, Chris.
Is it possible to finance if you're retired?
Is it possible? Yes, you just have to have a debt-to-income ratio that makes sense, right? The next question is, well, but I'm self-employed. I can't get a loan. Yes, you can if you pay your taxes. It has nothing to do about being retired. As a matter, isn't there a law that says that you can't discriminate against someone because they're old?
Correct.
There's actually a law, so you're set, Chris. You're good. Ha ha. Right. So yes, if you're retired, fine. You're self-employed, fine. You just have to have a debt-to-income ratio that will make sense for the lender. It's nothing to do with being old. It has nothing to do with being retired or being self-employed. You just have to actually show taxes. Is the simple answer. Yeah. Yes.
There are other lending options too.
Tons. Right. So we have, you know, Kevin, you want to talk about like hard money and stuff like that real quick? I mean, there are tons of lending options out there.
Yeah, hard money is pretty flexible. It's all privately raised, so you can, the hard money lender typically will make the decision in-house and fund and service the loan in-house. So if you're a sweet talker, you might be able to talk them into funding a deal.
There you go, right, and he's here. He's going to be on our panel, and obviously a very close colleague to all of us here. Yes?
Can I ask a question about HOAs?
Question about HOAs, awesome.
So the dollar amount feeds into the formula.
Totally, yeah, HOA, monthly HOA.
Do you do any investigation into the health of the home?
Right, so she asked, do you do any investigation into the health of the HOA? So what do I do, Joe, when I buy a place?
You generally call me.
I call Joe. I'm like, Joe, give me 5 minutes, because I'm not that smart. And I go to someone like him. And you don't know this yet. He actually found a mistake on Green Gables HOA that First Bank didn't find. When I sold 2 properties there a few months ago, he found a mistake. We talked to their accountant and told her what she was doing was fraudulent. She said, oh, I didn't realize that. I'll change it. I kid you not. This happened on the exact property we're talking about. So yes, you want to investigate the HOA. And that's the reason I didn't buy anything in an HOA for my first 18 years, because I was too scared to. But the market changed, and you can't buy houses anymore because they don't cash flow. So we had to learn about HOAs. I'll leave it this simple. It's really complicated. The problem is you want to find someone like Joe who understands this, but it's about 60% science and about 40% art. You want to go back in the minutes and see if anybody got thrown off the second floor balcony recently or anything like that, like the treasurer, for example. There's a lot of art to it as well. But yes, it is part of the risk. But what I can tell you is 2 or 3 years ago, our market completely changed, and we stopped buying single families and multiplexes because the numbers, as we described, were just too low. Yeah. Yes?
I would say to her point, just make sure that HOA is financially solvent so that you're not getting assessment after assessment.
Absolutely. But I will tell you that I bought 3 properties in First Creek that actually had a lawsuit going on with KB Homes, and I bought 3 properties in Robinwood, all within the last year, that have a special assessment coming up. Why? Because I got great deals on them, and I was willing to take the risk. So that's what makes this incredibly fun.
It's a trade-off.
It's a trade-off. Perfect. Yes, sir.
So talk more about why you don't do single family purchases anymore?
Yeah, what I found is going back almost 3 years now. I mean, 4 years ago, I'd say 80+% of what my buyers were buying were single families with a couple of condos and maybe a duplex thrown in. And then I just started to notice 2 or 3 years ago, we weren't buying them anymore. And the reason was, we would do the calculations, and we'd say, 6 cap for a single family, 7.5 cap for a townhouse, and we just started buying townhomes. So if you can, literally, I'm not even challenging you, I'm begging you, if you can show me single families around town, something that I'm missing, where we can get what we would consider relatively decent caps, call it mid-7s on single families, cup of coffee, dinner at Morton's. I mean, show me where these properties are. The problem is, the price, the whole metrics changed, and we were able to identify that through this simple spreadsheet, and we ended up buying attached. Yeah, that's the short answer. Is that not what you found?
Even with HOA fees? And
Absolutely.
special
Oh yeah,
assessment?
yeah, it's all in there. Yeah, believe me, I'm not here to trump, attached. I didn't buy any for 18 years, and then the last 7 I bought have all been attached, because that's what I think the market has changed.
Do you try and factor in the future special assessments on those?
To the extent that we know there is going to be one, they're actually quite rare. So yes, but if we don't know of one, then I don't put anything in because I don't know of one. I could also factor in that a home will get hit by lightning, and maybe it will, but once again, if I don't know, I don't know where to put it on the spreadsheet. That's just the way I do it. You take the spreadsheet, you do whatever you want. 2 minutes, 1 minute? 1 minute, okay. Let me just finish, let me just do one last slide, and then we'll take a couple more questions. Just basically, the last thing I want to tell you is that it is so important to match the property to you. So there are billionaires out there who own commercial, and they should own commercial, and it's the right thing for them. There are people who own little single families. There are people who own a mixture of stuff. The message I'm trying to get across is, it isn't about the property, it's about you and finding the right property for you. So when you say you own single or whatever, residential, and are moving to commercial because that's in some way better, I challenge that. And I say, show me the numbers, because I actually don't think so. At least I didn't find that for myself. If it is for you, then that's great and bullet for you. Yes, sir. Last couple questions.
We should take one condo conversions.
Condo conversions. What's it take?
I don't know what the question is. The take on it. What do you mean?
Like, as far as, do you think it's worth it to find commercial
to party wall agreement? To find a duplex and do it into party walls?
Condo conversion. Is it a good idea to do condo conversions in this market?
So buy an apartment building, condoize it and sell the individual units.
Okay, and the more way we do it is actually with party walls. I would say, as a beginner who isn't an attorney, who isn't the best lender in town, who isn't a guy who owns 70 units, I would stay the hell away from it. My humble, not so humble opinion. I mean, yeah, I would say learn about it, but I don't know that that would be the strategy I would recommend someone jump into right away. It's fairly complicated. It's probably more complicated than you think. We've done tons of party walls, breaking up in Denver. I've actually done a 34 unit, Lance Dennings. 12 years ago, we broke up his 34 units, so I've done it, but no, it's not something that I would jump into without a lot more knowledge, personally. Okay, awesome. Thank you, everybody. Very, very fun discussion. Appreciate all the questions. Thank you.
Great job, Charles. Thank you so much for all that information. Really good stuff. All right, guys. Now we're going to do our panel discussion. Do we have a topic for today, or is it going to be just open for questions?
Just open for questions.
Open for questions. All right. So we're going to have several different folks come up here. We're going to start with Greg Parham, First Alliance Title. Greg, tell us who you are and what you're going to talk about.
I thought we just asked whatever questions you guys have for the group. But I did want to bring up one thing because I always have a bone to pick with Charles on this. So, and I'm right. He likes to come up here and say he's right about everything, but he's not. Here's my bone. Somebody asked the question, well, do you have a property manager? Okay, and I get phone calls all the time from investors with their first property or their second property going, oh, I've got this problem, blah, 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 blah. And they're pretty significant problems. And then I also get questions from people saying, maybe they're not somebody jumping off the balcony. It might be more of the balcony fell, you know. So the other question I get is, hey, I'm just starting out as rentals, and I need to know whether it makes sense to get a property manager or not. Because I talked to Charles, and Charles said he doesn't do it. So should I do it? And then we all hear about needing to have trusted advisors like a lender, a broker we can talk to, and people that can really help us make decisions. And I think as a beginning investor, you don't know what you're getting into with property manager. So my advice to you would be this. Instead of doing your first 3 or 4 or 5 rentals and then getting a property manager, does that sound familiar? I'll manage it myself so I can learn it, and then I'll get a property manager. So in other words, you're going to you have no idea what you're doing, but you're going to step into it yourself rather than having somebody, I'll give you an alternative, manage the first property, you pay attention to what they're doing and you manage them, you learn how they do it well, and then you manage your own properties. Does that make sense? Okay. How's that? How's that?
Kevin and I
No, we're not going to hear a rebuttal on that. We're going right to Joe.
We teach a class on this where we debate in front of people, and it's such a great debate, and it's whatever's right for you. Absolutely positive.
Hey, would that be interesting if in a future session, if we had a debate on property management? Would that be fun? Would that be a fun session? Raise your hand. I mean, really, was that something y'all would be interested in? Okay, great. Let's add that to our list of possible topics.
Bring in tomatoes.
Yeah, you can throw food. All right, so panel is going to be you three?
Yeah, questions.
Okay, so what we're going to do, we're just going to introduce each of these guys. Oh, and Eric, I'm sorry. Introduce each of these gentlemen, talk about who you are, what do you do, what are you an expert in, and then we just want to open it up for questions. This is an open forum. If you have a question, please raise your hand, because if you're thinking it, there's probably 5 other people in here that are thinking it as well. So Greg, who are you?
I am an owner of a title company, First Alliance Title. It'll be my second go around with title companies. I'm a real estate attorney. I get kicks out of helping people structure seller finance and other weird transactions. That's what I find interesting.
Eric Ross, former property manager and current real estate investor in fix and flips and out-of-state investments.
Charles Roberts, 20-year investor, president of Your Castle in Sherwood. I have a portfolio of properties. I just love helping people build wealth by buying and holding properties.
My name is Kevin Amolsch, the founder of Pine Financial Group. How's everyone doing tonight? I missed most of your presentation, but it sounded fantastic. Hopefully every quarter or something. So I do a lot of hard money lending, private money lending. I also do a lot of investing myself. I have a portfolio of rental properties, developing a bunch of townhomes in Denver, got out-of-state stuff, developed 80 acres up in Brighton, so I went through the whole process with that awesome city up there. And I thought we were talking about analyzing deals today, so if you guys have questions about that, we're doing a lot of lending on some commercial stuff too. So I actually disagree a little bit with Charles. I think commercial could be a fantastic play if you get the right deal. A lot more value add deals in commercial than resi right now.
All right, so why don't you guys scoot over just a little bit so everybody can see. We're going to work on turning off the projector so it's not blinding you. Okay, questions. Who wants to be the brave first soul? I'm going to leave the mic up here, but I will...
What's your question?
As a developer, if you're looking at an infill lot that needs scrape, is there a general rule of thumb as to what cost you want to get that at? I mean, obviously, it's going to depend on what you're going to resell for, but is there a certain percentage rule of thumb?
Yeah, I mean, when you're analyzing a development deal, obviously there's a lot more variables to this, but a general rule, you want to be about 20-25% of the end value for your lot price.
For hard money lending, what kind of interest rate do you generally have to look at when we borrow money for that?
It depends a little bit on the structure, but a typical rate for us is 12.9%. Yeah, so you'll factor that into your offer.
And what about points?
We're at 3 points, right, Justin? we just came out with some new pricing because we want to be a bigger benefit to our clients, so we lowered our prices. We're now at 3 points, 12.9% interest, 100% financing.
And what kind of rate or term is that?
It's a 9-month loan. There's no prepayment penalties, no minimum interest earned, nothing like that.
You know, what are the qualifications to be on the residential area? I know that commercial is probably a little different than on residential.
For the hard money lending side, you're asking?
For the hard money.
The question is, what's the qualifications to borrow hard money? You know, we really focus on the deal first. Most of our clients are fixing and flipping, so it's really easy to analyze that type of deal. If we think that you're going to be successful and profitable, we want to try to work together, but we just don't want to kick you out there and sink or swim. We want to make sure that you have some reserves because things go wrong in this business. So first the property, then reserves. We look at credit, income, but there's not a lot of weight put on either of those.
What do you mean by reserve?
Liquidity in the bank.
Yeah, liquidity in the bank, because I mean, I'm coming to you, I don't have the money. So are you asking me to have some sort of reserve, some sort of money?
My guess is that everybody up here would say the same thing. Reserves is going to be the #1 safety net to keep you, but for longevity. I mean, you will get out of business even if you're profitable if you don't have reserves. You know, you could be profitable and be negative cash flow in real estate. So it's not about profitability, it's about cash flow.
Question for Charles. Since you manage your own properties, when you're screening your tenants, what is to you the most critical thing that you assess related to that would be tenant?
Okay, so he's asking about managing my own, how do I screen my tenants? So I'm going to actually take just a very different route here. I'm only doing Section 8. I only care about getting the rent. Believe it or not, that's really what I care most about. So, and this is really an Eric Moore question, but I will tell you that as a guy, I don't plan on ever taking a non-Section 8 tenant again. I love Section 8. There are psychopaths everywhere. There are psychopathic non-Section 8 tenants. There are psychopathic Section 8 tenants. And yes, there's a couple of psychopaths in this room. Try figuring out who's the psychopath and who isn't. It's not just the beard. You can't actually tell. So I actually don't I don't believe that I'm the world's greatest landlord that can figure out someone. Mostly I want to get the rent. And I have about 2,700 months of managing my tenants, 1 month, 1 tenant. And I have some bad stories, but I don't have that many bad stories, and I treat my tenants really nice. So I'm going to pass it over to you, because as a property manager, there's probably a lot of things that one should do, but I have found as a guy who just does it, I just want to get the rent, and basically I'll mostly deal with what I have to deal with, as simplistic as that sounds.
I don't disagree with Charles on Section 8. I'm a huge fan of the program, and as I was running properties for other folks, the more Section 8, the better. I like that government rent. As far as a background check, our biggest thing was income, credit, and criminal. So because I was a third-party manager, it was not my property, I was held responsible for the decisions made. So I wanted to see, you know, a decent credit score. What's that? You know, we use 600 as a number. I wanted to see 3 times rent gross income, and I wanted to see no violent or sexual convictions ever. Those were the big deals for me, managing for other folks.
So Section 8, you're not going to get 3 times. So how do you?
Yes, you will. Well, because so they're not going to pay more than 30% of their income. So their portion is 30% 3x. So if their portion is 110, I need to see 330 a month approved. The government's picking up the tab.
I've got Section 8 tenants that don't make a penny and
Right.
still have $500 a month that they have to pay.
Yeah, there's something wrong with that calculation.
They
so.
should go to Denver Housing and change it.
But yeah, I mean,
Well,
if they're.
I don't know, they get, I mean, the Section 8 person told me that they get something from somewhere. I mean, they're on disability or wherever.
Oh, that's income.
So, I mean,
They can't garnish it.
we would make it work with that.
Okay, so that's what you would look at their portion. Their other income needs to be 3 times whatever
Their portion is, exactly. And Section 8 has already done that calculation. It's 30%, they can't pay more than 30%, so it worked out. I've got anyone back here?
Hey, I'd like to add to that. It is really important that you're consistent with your parameters that you put in. If you want 3 times rent, you need to tell everyone it's 3 times rent, because one tenant might only have 2 times rent, and all of a sudden you're discriminating.
And I can still work with you with less than 3x, I just may require an additional deposit.
That's right, but you need to make sure that everyone has that same chance.
Absolutely.
There's a bill pending right now in the legislature that's going to require, well, if it passes, it's going to require certain criteria be stated to the tenant and require that your application fees have to be exactly what your actual costs of the background screening and things like that are. And then when you deny a tenant, you're going to have to give them the specific reasons of why you denied them. So if you guys are landlords, take a look at that, because it's causing some fun times. It's a very interesting piece of legislation. I think that the Colorado Apartment Association is doing a good job lobbying against that, but it could still pass.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm curious, with Charles, you have clients that come to you, they want to invest. How do you go about managing that? I mean, because you can't see your computer, do the analysis of every deal that's coming through, and then choose who you send this out to as a client. Are you teaching your clients to look for deals?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I will work with multiple people. I mean, Justin's was a perfect example. I was actually working with one guy, real good, didn't want it. Okay, brought it to another guy, he didn't want it. Okay, and I brought it to Justin, and it was a really solid deal. What's hard to believe, but absolutely true, is that if you, let's say you work with 5 different people, they're all different and they're all in different stages of what they want. It almost never comes up, I have found in reality, that I'm like, oh my God, I've got the perfect property for 2 different people. People are different enough and they're in a different stage. They have one under contract. They don't want one right now. They want to buy one in 9 months. That it's just like never a problem. I work with a lot of different people, but because I'm not in the game of trying to find something 20% below value that everybody wants, I'm in the game of trying to match up the right property for the right investor. I'm very surprisingly almost never have that problem. I'm putting a property under contract today, and it was just the right property for the right buyer. Now you also asked, are they actually looking? Absolutely, if they want to. And in this day and age, they can see everything I can. It's not about information, it's about long-term knowledge, and it's about advice. That's the value that real estate agents bring. So without question, my best agents, my best clients tend to be the ones who actually will point something out. That was different, because I've had this one, I knew everything about it, but you did call me like that day, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, how about you, Justin? You know, like it's because he called me, he got this. That's the reality of it, is that it's very, very specific to a person, I found. Great question.
This is for Kevin. What are you seeing in the terms of value-added commercial where there's opportunity?
It's all over the board. I just got a deal today I haven't even looked at yet, but it's a condo, office condo conversion. So you've heard of the resi you talked about that, I think, today. So this one he thinks he can get into for just under 6 million, as is he's saying is 8, he's got an appraisal, but repaired and converted, it's like an 11 point something $1 million deal. So that would be an example, but, you know, did a restaurant in St. Paul early, or just last year, into last year, and they just did a tenant finish for it, and they got long-term tenants and added value that way.
Did they have the person, the restaurant under contract, and they just needed the hard money to kind of put the whole thing together?
Yeah, when you're looking at hard money, this is just short-term loan, you guys. You got to have a real clear exit strategy. So typically, we want to see the path to us getting paid back, and in that kind of case, when you're trying to increase cash flow to increase value, we want to see where that cash flow is coming from. Yeah, it's usually leases.
So they had a lease signed, they just needed the money to...
It's an LOI, but basically, I mean, they were buying it, so they didn't sign a lease on something they didn't own, but there was interest.
I have a question about is there like a good place to see just a checklist of, okay, I want to rent out to, the Section 8 question. Just if I want to do that going forward, what's my checklist? What do I need to know? Kind of thing. Where do I go for that?
I mean, so the best place is the Housing Authority's website. So Denver Housing, Aurora Housing, Jefferson County, they're going to have what you're looking for. It's not necessarily, I'm deciding that I'm going to, you can take a Section 8 tenant on one property and not on another. So it's not a program you sign up for. You advertise it that you'll accept it. A Section 8 tenant will bring you a form. It's called a RAFTA. You fill it out, they take it back, and that begins the process. The inspection, they're going to use basically a HUD checklist for the inspection to make sure that the property is habitable. But beyond that, you know, each housing authority may have their own quirks on how they work, and you find that on their website.
You give us a call. I have a check. Let me go to the back and come up. Yes, sir. With the glasses. No. Yeah, you.
No, in fact, combining the flip into an investment property. How do you guys feel about that? Instead of taking your cash back out as a profit, rolling it into into the rental side. I mean,
So like buying it with equity, adding value to
the
it?
cap
So,
rate would work, but you're still.
so really interesting, my guy Brian called me, he's an investor, young guy, his wife is delivering on Friday, calls me yesterday saying, all right, I think I gotta do this deal. His buddy wants to sell him a property, and he said, here's the pros and cons. There's 30K in equity, it's worth 210, he'll sell it to me for 180, but it's only a 5.2 cap, what do you think? So the question comes down to, in my opinion, internal rate of return. There is an answer, he's looking at it today. So it depends on what you think. But I would say, if you're talking about buying a property and actually adding equity to it and holding it as a rental, oh my God, that's a slam dunk. Because if you have equity in it, there's everything you can do with it. You can simply leave the equity there, or as someone mentioned, one of you guys, you can leverage it out. So that is exactly what you want. That's what's hard to find, is rentals with decent cap rates and returns that have equity, but that is exactly what you're looking for all day long.
Yeah, in fact, using hard money is a great way to get into property with sometimes no money down. I know, Joe, you guys teach that class quite a bit, but if you're finding a value add on the residential side, you could, repair it, bring the value up. You could borrow all the money to buy it, fix it, and refinance with Joe, and be into it with almost nothing. You got to find the deal.
It's awesome if you can find that. Let me go to the gentleman behind you and then I'll see. Did you have a question? Did you? No. Oh, okay, let me go here and then up here.
Just Section 8, how do you know what they'll pay for Section 8 rent?
So they publish that data. So they publish the data annually. New fiscal year is in October for the government. So Denver Housing, Aurora Housing, .org. You can go there, look at payment standards, and it'll have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bedroom payment standard, and then the utility allowance, that if you don't pay the utilities on behalf of the tenant, they will subtract that from your top amount, and that will be the top amount of rent paid for your unit. What they will then do is a rent reasonableness study, and they will look at other units around the area and compare those rents to non-Section 8 rents and come up with a final price.
I have a question for you on your fix and flips in property
So the property we did on Poplar, everything had to be coordinated with the HOA. I had to get permission. I could only use the elevator during certain times. The townhouse in Roxborough, it's a small HOA, they didn't care. The one at Creekside and Lodo, they were very hands-off, and we were doing very little work. So it's dependent upon, but if you are gonna work in an HOA, I suggest getting those docs early, figuring out what you can and can't do, and it'll just help you along in the process.
Can you guys talk a little bit about buying and holding in a different market? And obviously this has all been tailored for Denver, but you know, obviously there's concerns. It's not right here. You can't drive to the property. These basic things, but I'm kind of looking for personal anecdotal stories. Trust.
Yeah, we might not agree on this one. I think it's very risky, and if you don't have some experience, I would strongly encourage you to stay in your own backyard. Most of the emerging markets that you hear about aren't appreciating at all. So you better be buying that for the cash flow. And you know what, the vacancy rates are pretty high in some of those more distressed areas. So you got to withstand turnovers where you're putting money into the property to turn it over and having vacancies that could be 6 months or more. That kills your pro forma. So I guess that would be my word of caution.
I agree completely. 100%. So I'm currently investing in a Southeast market. I'm from there, so I have a lot of friends and boots on the ground professionals there. So it's a trust game, and it is 100% for the cash flow. The appreciation over the last 5 years is 2.1%. Great. My numbers still work from a cash flow perspective because I'm able to buy at a good price, and I'm buying that cash flow. But 100%, if you're not experienced, if you can't look at reports and go, again, I would absolutely agree with Kevin, stay in your own backyard.
And when I started looking for another round of properties 3 years ago, I thought the same thing. Commercial, the numbers didn't make sense for me. I looked out of town. I just said, you know what, I know this market. So there wasn't really metrics to it. I just felt that I wanted to control what I could control. So that's why I didn't buy. But who here owns properties out of town? Maybe talk to some of these guys, you know, some of those guys.
Kind of on the analysis side, what do you recommend as far as managing expectations with property managers? Whether or not they're doing a good job, how do you hold them accountable? What do you recommend there?
That's so interesting that you asked that, because I was just going to grab the microphone and say one other thing about investing out of town is be willing to fire your manager very quickly. Because a lot of them don't really care that much about your property or you being out of town.
Agreed. I can't.
So what am I looking for? I want to see turnover quickly. If I get a vacancy and I'm not getting traction within 1 month, 6 weeks, I want to be on the phone talking to them and finding out what is the problem. And price fixes everything. So if they're trying to get the top dollar for a property that's not worth it, and they start throwing excuses like the neighborhood or whatever the excuse is that it's not renting, drop the darn price, and that will get it rented out. I don't know if that even answered your question.
Well, how do you manage, so unfortunately I've had some experience, work getting done, but their standards aren't to my expectations, I'm coming to find out because I started looking at the property myself afterwards, which I feel like I shouldn't have to do. So how do I manage that? If I'm going to pay them, how do I manage those expectations with them to making sure they're getting the shit done?
Your expectations are too high.
Yeah, great, awesome. Good answer.
The other thing I would recommend is make sure you're getting those quarterly inspection reports, like with video and some other real information from your property managers that they're actually doing those inspections. Because that's where I see a lot of problems. Like, you don't want to be that landlord that gets the call from the cops because somebody's got their grow house in your basement, and now they're going to tag your house and try to sell it. So that's one big thing I see that property management is good at, usually, is at least doing routine inspections, but make sure they're providing you that information.
So what kind of report, I'm sorry, what kind of report are you expecting? You said a video.
Yeah, I want a report that says that they've walked through the whole property, it's been inspected, there's nothing weird going on, and things work.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Hey, Derek.
Yeah.
When you were a manager, you went into every property every 6 months to change smoke detector batteries and furnace filters, is that right?
So if it wasn't a member of my team, a vendor that we've worked with, but we did have a presence in the property no less than 3 times a year. And again, absolutely, from a former manager, and I think I did a pretty good job, my clients would probably agree, but it's management. It's not collecting rent and putting an ad out. You have to manage tenants. And to what Kevin said, don't be afraid to fire your manager. If they're not doing a good job, you're not getting the information, find another one. It is a service-based business. I've learned a lot of things and I can apply a different set of strategies, but at the end of the day, a property manager is still providing a service. And if you're not happy with the service, find someone that can make you happy.
So when you're buying out of state, you say you're buying for cash flow. Do you get loans on it, or do you pay in full?
It just depends. So the question was, if investing out of state, am I paying cash or getting loans? It just varies on the property. So small $30,000 purchases, we're paying cash.
I had a question for Matt. On the reserve, what's the ratio on money? You know, for simplicity fees on the property. I mean, I want to borrow, say, $100,000. How much reserve is required for that?
And so it's real simple. We want 7.5% of the loan amount in reserves after closing. So if you need to bring any money to closing, you'll need that plus the reserves. To calculate what you need at closing, we loan 70% of the value. So if you're at 71, 72, 73% of the value, you need to cover that difference plus all the costs.
You mentioned grow houses. What's the easiest way to find out if a house has been a meth house or something of that nature?
You can do a test. Test it for meth.
Where do you get the test?
Hire a test or an inspector to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any signs that you can just visually or use your senses to find it out?
You crack pipes and stuff. Some of the cleanest looking houses end up having, meth contamination. So I think if you're worried about that, which you should be, just have it inspected.
Okay.
So I have personal experience having purchased one of these properties. And if you do research, you'll find that if you're in the below the median price, they say that something like 50% of the properties are contaminated with meth. You can't, so there's a lab that tests for meth, and there's licensed people, industrial hygienists that are approved by the state to go in and test them. It's like $800 or $1,200, depends on who you get. There's a light test that they do for real estate deals where they can combine the samples, and it's only like $400. You can go in and swab the return on the air and send the test in, and that's probably, you're probably 95% of the way there to know if the place has had meth. And you cannot tell by smell, you cannot, it's totally different than it was 10 years ago.
One more question, and then I want to kind of wrap things up here, let you guys get on with your day. Yes, ma'am.
As far as leases go, you're discussing changes coming up. Are you guys out creating your own leases? Are you using generic leases that kind of internet? Or are you doing
Have an attorney prepare a lease for you, preferably an attorney that does a lot of eviction work, so that they've kind of tested that lease over and over and over. And most of the property managers have good leases too, because they've done the same thing. Like they've tested all those clauses for one time or another, and they keep adding to them. I don't do any leases. I do, but that's something that I don't really get excited about. No, but I can refer you to a number of people that will do those for you, so I'd be happy to provide that referral for you. Okay, I have 1.5 more questions. Okay, last one for real, then we got to wrap up. Yeah.
Not really a question. I'm a real estate investor. So one time my wife and I owned 28 rental properties, and just as I turn 70 tomorrow, I want to share some pearls of wisdom. One, if real estate investing is easy, everybody can do it. I know there are troubles that Charles talked about. Everybody has their problems, their nightmare scenarios, but if you've got the stick-to-itiveness, stick with it, you can really benefit yourself in the long run. That leads into the second pearl, and that's simply invest for the long term. at 70, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be alive, but it sure would be nice if all of those 28 rental properties would generate cash flow continuing to pay, because obviously, if you get started at your young age, you'll be able to pay off the loans, and it's just pure cash flow coming in. And then the final thing is simply to identify with our panel out here, you need a good realtor, you need a good lender, you need a good title company, and just someone that you can partner with that's going to be looking out for your best interest.
That's a great summary. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. So next month, we're going to do, it's going to be April 11th, I believe. We'll send you some information. Reach out to us with the Facebook, because we will try to, we're going to have this group, this exclusive group. There'll be some rules. We don't want people soliciting stuff on there. But we do want a lot of collaboration. So next month's topic is going to be finding deals, which is kind of hard to do right now. So hopefully we'll have some creative ways to find some deals, bring in a couple other speakers to help us do that as well. Thank you very much for coming. Do you want to say anything? Yeah.
Can I get a hand for the panel? They did a great job. Thank you. All right, guys. Our panel's going to stick around for a few minutes. We have the room until 2 o'clock. So you have a few minutes to mingle, mix with folks. If you have questions, come see anybody up here. Again, Kevin, Pine Financial, for your hard money needs. Charles Roberts, York Castle Real Estate, for any real estate needs. You don't get hired out anymore. He's an expert. You can hire to consult. Greg Parham, First Alliance Title. If you need title work, please keep them in mind. I do a ton of business with them. They're terrific. And if I can help you with any loans, you can call me, Joe Massey at Castle Cook Mortgage. Thank you all, and we will see you next month, Wednesday, April 11th.